People always say that betrayal comes without warning. They're wrong. It comes dressed in expensive clothes, wearing a perfect smile. And sometimes, it introduces you as someone you're not. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and until one unforgettable Friday night in Manhattan, I believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. If you've ever loved someone so deeply that you built your entire future around their dreams, then you know exactly why I ignored every warning sign. Looking back now, they were everywhere. The late-night meetings, the business trips that somehow became longer every month, the phone that never left his hand, the way Ethan would smile at a message before locking the screen the second I walked into the room. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, he'd kiss my forehead and laugh. "It's just work, Claire." And I believed him, because that's what wives do. They trust. 8 years. That's how long we've been married. 8 years of supporting his career. 8 years of moving whenever his promotions demanded it. 8 years of postponing my own dreams, because we kept saying, once Ethan makes partner, everything will be easier. I had my own interior design business once. It wasn't huge, but I loved it. Then Ethan received an offer from Hayes Capital Group in New York. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. The only problem, the company expected executive spouses to attend charity events, networking dinners, and social functions. Someone had to keep our image perfect. So I quietly closed my studio. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself marriage meant sacrifice. I never imagined I was sacrificing everything for a man who had already erased me from his future. 3 weeks before the annual Hayes Capital Gala, Ethan surprised me. "I want you to come this year." I almost dropped the coffee mug. "Really?" He smiled. "Of course." It had been almost 2 years since he'd invited me to any company event. He always had an excuse. Limited seats, executive meetings, private investor dinners. This time felt different. He even bought me a dress, a deep emerald gown that fit perfectly. When I stood in front of the mirror, I actually felt beautiful again. I spent hours getting ready. Natalie called while I was doing my makeup. "You sound happy." "I am." "I don't know," she said carefully. "Claire, are you sure everything's okay between you two?" I laughed. "You're overthinking." There was silence. Then she sighed. "I hope you're right." I wish she hadn't been. The gala was held inside one of Manhattan's most luxurious hotels. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above hundreds of guests. Politicians, investors, celebrities, executives. Every person in the ballroom looked wealthier than the last. Ethan squeezed my hand. "Stay close." "I will." People smiled as we walked in. Some nodded politely. Others looked confused. At the time, I didn't understand why. Now I do. Because many of them had never seen me before, and many of them had been told Ethan wasn't married. Then I saw her. Madison Hayes, the daughter of billionaire Richard Hayes. Beautiful, elegant, confident. She walked directly toward Ethan. Too directly. She hugged him, not like colleagues, like people who had become comfortable. Very comfortable. I smiled politely. She barely looked at me. Instead, she asked Ethan, "Who's this?" My heart slowed. He hesitated, just for 1 second. 1 second that changed everything. Then he smiled, placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, and said the words that destroyed 8 years of marriage. "This is my sister, Claire." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The music disappeared. The conversations faded. It felt as though the entire ballroom had fallen silent. I stared at him, waiting for the smile, waiting for him to laugh and say, "I'm kidding, this is my wife." But he didn't. Instead, he kept talking. "We grew up together in Boston. She's visiting New York for a few days." Boston? We had never lived in Boston. Every sentence made the lie worse. Madison smiled warmly. "It's so nice to meet you." I forced myself to shake her hand. My fingers were ice cold. Inside, something had already broken. And I realized the most dangerous betrayals aren't discovered behind closed doors. Sometimes they're announced into a microphone in the middle of a crowded ballroom. I don't remember letting go of Madison's hand. I don't remember smiling. I only remember one thought repeating inside my head. Why? Why would my own husband erase 8 years of marriage with a single sentence? I wanted to confront Ethan right there. I wanted to scream, to tell every person in that ballroom the truth. But before I could say a word, Richard Hayes stepped onto the stage. The room instantly fell silent. The billionaire founder of Hayes Capital Group didn't need to raise his voice. People listened because one decision from him could change their careers overnight. "Good evening, everyone." Polite applause filled the ballroom. Richard welcomed investors from London, Chicago, San Francisco, and Toronto before announcing a record-breaking year for the company. Everyone applauded, except me. I couldn't hear a single number he mentioned. My eyes stayed on Ethan. He looked calm, relaxed, as if nothing unusual had happened, as if introducing his wife as his sister was completely normal. How many times had he done this before? After the speech, waiters began serving champagne. Ethan leaned close to me without looking in my eyes. "Please don't make a scene." I slowly turned toward him. "What did you just say?" "I'll explain later." "You told everyone I'm your sister." "I know." "You know?" His jaw tightened. "Claire, please." That word, please. As if I were the unreasonable one. As if I should quietly accept being erased. "You have 5 seconds." He looked around to make sure nobody was listening. "It's complicated." "No," I whispered. "It's actually very simple. I'm your wife." He closed his eyes. "Not tonight." I stared at him in disbelief. Not tonight? When exactly was I supposed to be his wife again? Tomorrow morning? Next week? Only when nobody important was watching? Before I could answer, another executive approached us. "Ethan!" A tall man in his late 30s smiled broadly. "This must be your sister." Again, the word hit me like a knife. Ethan nodded without hesitation. "Yes." "I'm Daniel Foster." The man shook my hand. "Ethan talks about you all the time." "Really?" I almost laughed. If Ethan talked about me, why did nobody know he was married? Daniel smiled politely before lowering his voice. "I've always wanted to meet you." There was something strange about the way he looked at Ethan, almost uncomfortable, as though he knew a secret. Then Daniel leaned closer. "You two should enjoy the evening." He walked away, But just before disappearing into the crowd, he glanced back at me. For only a second. His expression wasn't friendly. It wasn't judgmental either. It looked like guilt. The rest of the evening felt unreal. Every conversation was another lie. So you're Ethan's sister? Did you fly in from Boston? Your brother is one of our brightest executives. Brother, brother, brother. Each time someone said it, Ethan smiled. Each smile hurt more than the last. I stopped correcting people, not because I agreed, because I wanted to understand. No one lies this confidently without a reason. An hour later, Ethan disappeared. I need to speak with investors. He walked away before I could answer. I watched him cross the ballroom. Instead of joining the investors, he walked directly toward Madison. She smiled the moment she saw him. He said something that made her laugh. Then, without thinking, she gently adjusted his tie. A gesture too intimate for co-workers. Too natural. Too practiced. My stomach tightened. I quickly looked around. Nobody seemed surprised, which meant this wasn't the first time they'd acted like that. I quietly followed them, not close enough to be noticed, just close enough to hear. They stepped onto a private balcony overlooking Manhattan. The city lights glittered below. Madison folded her arms. How much longer? Ethan sighed. I'm handling it. You've been saying that for months. I know. My father keeps asking why you're still single. Single. My heart nearly stopped. Ethan looked away. I just need more time. Madison stepped closer. I can't keep lying to him forever. Lying? About what? Then she asked the question that changed everything. Have you filed the divorce yet? My knees nearly gave out. Divorce? Nobody had mentioned divorce. Not to me. Not once. Ethan rubbed his forehead. I'm working on it. You promised. I said I'm working on it. Madison looked disappointed. I love you, Ethan. I know. Love. The word echoed through my mind. Then, she reached up and kissed him. Not on the cheek, not by accident, on the lips. Long enough to remove every last doubt. I couldn't breathe. 8 years gone in 5 seconds. I stumbled backward. My heel caught the edge of a flower pot. It tipped over and crashed onto the marble floor. The sound echoed across the balcony. Ethan turned instantly. Claire! Our eyes met. For the first time that evening, he looked afraid. Not guilty. Afraid. Because now, I knew. Everything. I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned, walked through the ballroom, past hundreds of guests, past the orchestra, past the glittering chandeliers, and out into the cold Manhattan night. Behind me I heard Ethan shouting my name. Claire! Wait! But for the first time in 8 years, I didn't. The cold Manhattan air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay another second. Behind me, I heard the hotel doors swing open. Claire! Ethan. His voice echoed across the sidewalk. I kept walking. Faster. Claire, please! A black town car slowed beside me, and before I could reach the corner, Ethan caught up. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firmly enough to stop me. I slowly looked down at his hand, then back into his eyes. Take your hand off me. He did, immediately. People walked past us, pretending not to notice. New Yorkers had seen worse. I can explain. I laughed, for the first time that night. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes when your heart has finally cracked beyond repair. Explain what? You introducing me as your sister? Or your girlfriend asking if you filed for divorce? His face turned pale. You heard that? I heard enough. He looked around nervously before lowering his voice. Not here. I folded my arms. No. You've had 8 years to explain. I'm done listening. I turned and hailed a taxi. Before Ethan could stop me, I climbed inside. As the cab pulled away, I watched him disappear in the rearview mirror, standing alone, hands in his pockets, watching his life drive away. Our apartment overlooked Central Park. 2 years earlier, Ethan had called it our dream home. I unlocked the door. Silence. The kind of silence that suddenly feels unfamiliar. I walked into the bedroom. Our wedding photo still sat on the dresser. We looked so happy, so young, so certain. I picked up the silver frame. For several seconds I just stared at it. Then, I turned it face down. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Ethan, calling. Decline. Again. Decline. Again. Voicemail. Text message. Please answer. Another one. You don't understand. Then another. I never wanted you to find out like this. I stared at the screen. Find out. Not if. Not whether. He admitted there was something to find. That hurt even more. At midnight, there was a knock on the door. Not Ethan. Natalie. The moment she saw my face, she knew. She didn't ask questions. She simply wrapped her arms around me. I broke down. For nearly 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, she handed me a cup of tea. Tell me everything. So I did. Every word, every lie, every moment from the ballroom. When I finished, Natalie didn't look surprised. She looked angry. Very angry. How long have you known? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Too long. My stomach tightened. You knew something. I suspected. You never told me. I didn't have proof. I stared at her. What did you suspect? Natalie took a deep breath. About 6 months ago, I saw Ethan having dinner with Madison. I blinked. Business dinner? I thought so at first. She shook her head. They were holding hands. The room spun. You should have told me. I know. I'm sorry. I kept hoping I was wrong. I closed my eyes. Hope. Sometimes hope is more dangerous than the truth. Natalie reached into her purse. I didn't want to do this. She placed a small envelope on the coffee table. What's this? I hired a private investigator. I stared at her. You what? I was worried about you. I paid him myself. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, lots of them. Ethan leaving Madison's apartment, Ethan and Madison in the Hamptons, Ethan holding her hand at an airport, a Christmas charity event, a yacht, restaurants, hotels, date after date, month after month. The earliest photo was almost a year old. One photograph made my hands tremble. It showed Ethan kissing Madison outside a brownstone in Brooklyn. The timestamp read, 11 months ago. Nearly a year. He hadn't made one mistake. He had built another life. There was one more document in the envelope, a copy of a newspaper article. The headline read, "Hayes Capital Heir expected to announce engagement this fall." Below the headline was a photograph of Madison, and standing beside her, Ethan. The article described him as one of New York's most eligible bachelor executives. Bachelor. My husband was America's eligible bachelor. According to the media, I didn't exist. I looked up at Natalie. How is this possible? She leaned forward. Claire, I think this is bigger than an affair. What do you mean? She took a slow breath. As a corporate attorney, I've seen people lie for promotions. I've seen fake divorces. I've seen hidden relationships. But this, she pointed at the article, this looks planned. I frowned. Planned by who? I don't know. But Ethan isn't just cheating. He's pretending to be someone else. And people with this much money never lie without expecting something in return. Those words echoed in my mind. Something in return. What exactly was Ethan trying to gain? Love? Power? Or something worth millions? Just then, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it. This time, I answered. Hello? A man's calm voice spoke. Mrs. Bennett? Yes. My name is Daniel Foster, the executive from the gala. I know it's late, but we need to talk. I froze. What about? There was a long pause, then he quietly said, because if you don't learn the truth tonight, by tomorrow morning, Ethan will destroy every piece of evidence against him. Silence. Then one final sentence. And Claire, you are in far more danger than you realize. The line went dead. I stared at my phone long after the call ended. Natalie leaned forward. Who was that? I swallowed. Daniel Foster, the executive from the gala. Her expression changed immediately. What did he want? He said Ethan is going to destroy evidence. Natalie didn't answer for several seconds. Then she quietly asked, Did he sound frightened? Yes. Then we should listen. 30 minutes later, we arrived at a quiet 24-hour cafe on the Upper East Side. It was nearly 1 a.m. Only a few customers sat inside. Daniel was already there. He wore the same dark suit from the gala, but without the confidence I'd seen earlier that evening. He looked exhausted, like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. When he saw us, he stood up. I wasn't sure you'd come. I sat across from him. You have 5 minutes. He nodded. Fair enough. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Daniel slid a small flash drive across the table. I think this belongs to you. I frowned. What is it? Insurance. Against Ethan. Natalie picked up the flash drive. What's on it? Daniel looked around before lowering his voice. Emails. Contracts. Internal messages. And security footage. My heartbeat quickened. Ethan's? Daniel nodded. Not just Ethan. Several executives. What are you talking about? He took a deep breath. You think tonight was about an affair. It wasn't. It was about control. I stared at him. I don't understand. Daniel folded his hands. 3 years ago, Richard Hayes announced privately that he planned to retire. He wanted one person to eventually lead Hayes Capital. Ethan knew that. So did everyone on the executive team. I frowned. What does that have to do with Madison? Daniel answered without hesitation. Everything. According to Daniel, Ethan had spent years carefully building Richard Hayes's trust, working late, winning major clients, bringing record profits to the company. On the surface, he looked like the perfect future CEO. But there was one obstacle. Richard Hayes believed family mattered. He had often said that whoever married Madison would eventually become part of the company's future leadership. So, Ethan, I whispered. Daniel nodded. He saw Madison as an opportunity. Not a woman, an opportunity. My stomach turned. Natalie leaned forward. So Ethan hid his marriage? Exactly, Daniel continued. Officially, Ethan has been presenting himself inside the company as a single man for almost 2 years. I felt sick. Everyone believed him? Not everyone. I didn't. So why didn't you expose him? Daniel looked ashamed. Because I was afraid. Afraid of Ethan? No. He looked toward the window. Afraid of losing everything. Daniel explained that Ethan had become one of the most powerful executives in the company. Anyone who questioned him suddenly found themselves transferred, demoted, or quietly pushed out. He built alliances. He made people dependent on him. And once Madison fell in love with him, his influence became even stronger. But Richard, I interrupted, didn't he ever ask about Ethan's past? Daniel gave a bitter smile. Ethan had an answer for everything. He claimed he had never found the right woman. He said work always came first. And everyone believed him. Until tonight. I looked down at the flash drive. So why give this to me? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and placed a thick folder on the table. Because there's something else. Inside were printed emails, expense reports, travel records, private calendars. Every page carried Ethan's name. Natalie quickly scanned the documents, then her eyes widened. This can't be right. What? She handed me one page. It listed luxury hotel reservations, private flights, expensive gifts, jewelry, designer handbags, vacations in Italy. The total amount spent? Over $1.8 million. Paid for by Hayes Capital Group. He used company money? Daniel nodded. Most of those expenses were disguised as client entertainment. But they were actually spent on Madison. I looked up. So he committed fraud? Daniel's face remained serious. That's only the beginning. He pulled out one final document. Unlike the others, it wasn't signed by Ethan. It carried Richard Hayes's signature. At the top were the words, Confidential Succession Plan. I frowned. What's this? Daniel looked directly into my eyes. Richard updated his succession plan 6 months ago. If Madison married Ethan, Ethan would receive voting shares worth nearly, he paused, $120 million. The cafe suddenly felt silent. 120 million. This had never been about love. Not with Madison. Not even with me. It had always been about money, power, control. Everything Ethan had done, every lie, every fake smile, every business trip, had been part of a plan worth $120 million. Natalie slowly closed the folder. "We're going to the police." Daniel quickly shook his head. "No." "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because you still don't know the worst part." My pulse quickened. "There's more." Daniel's face grew pale. "Claire." "Ethan didn't just lie about being single. He also lied about who owns your apartment." I froze. "What?" Daniel leaned closer. "The apartment you think belongs to both of you doesn't legally belong to Ethan at all." He paused before delivering the sentence that left me speechless. "It belongs to you. And I don't think Ethan has realized that yet." The cafe fell silent. I stared at Daniel, convinced I'd misheard him. "What did you say?" He repeated the words slowly. "The apartment belongs to you. Legally." I frowned. "That's impossible." "When Ethan and I bought it, we signed everything together." Daniel gently shook his head. "That's what you were meant to believe." Natalie pulled the folder toward her. "Show me." Daniel handed her several copies of property records. As a corporate attorney, Natalie scanned the pages with practiced speed. Within seconds, she stopped. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God." I felt my chest tighten. "What is it?" She looked up at me. "Daniel is right. The apartment is registered under a family trust." "What family trust?" She turned another page. "The Bennett Family Living Trust." I blinked. "I've never heard of that." "You probably weren't supposed to." Daniel folded his hands. "Claire, do you remember your grandfather?" I smiled sadly. "Of course." "William Bennett." "He passed away 4 years ago." "He left me a small inheritance." Daniel nodded. "He left you much more than that." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "He created a trust before he died. And when you and Ethan bought the apartment, your inheritance became the down payment." I remembered that day. Grandfather had always insisted I keep part of my inheritance separate. He'd even recommended a lawyer I'd never met. At the time, I signed the documents without asking many questions. I trusted Ethan. Why wouldn't I? We were married. Natalie turned another page. "There it is." She pointed to one paragraph. "The trustee approved the purchase. The beneficiary is Claire Bennett. The property cannot be sold, refinanced, or transferred without Claire's written consent." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" She smiled for the first time that night. "It means Ethan can't touch this apartment. He can't sell it. He can't borrow against it. He can't even list it for sale without your signature." Relief washed over me, for one brief moment. Then another thought hit me. If he doesn't own it, why has he always called it his apartment? Daniel answered quietly. Because he wanted everyone else to believe it was. He reached into his briefcase again. "I think there's something you should hear." He placed a small digital voice recorder on the table. "When was this recorded?" 3 weeks ago. Where? In Ethan's office. I looked at him in shock. You recorded him? Daniel hesitated. I wasn't supposed to. But after everything I'd seen, I started protecting myself. He pressed play. Static filled the speaker, then Ethan's voice, clear as day. Once Madison and I are engaged, another man laughed. You'll be the king of Hayes Capital. Ethan chuckled. Exactly. Then came the sentence that made my blood run cold. Claire will sign whatever I put in front of her. The room went silent. My hands began to shake. He sounded so certain, so confident, like I wasn't a person, like I was simply another document waiting for his signature. The recording continued. She trusts me completely. Laughter. Poor woman. Click. Daniel stopped the recording. I couldn't speak. Natalie broke the silence. He planned to steal the apartment. Daniel nodded. Yes. But that's not all. He'd already contacted 2 banks. I frowned. For what? Large business loans. He intended to use the apartment as collateral. But he couldn't. Exactly. Because legally, he doesn't own it. I leaned back in my chair. Everything suddenly made sense. The unexpected documents Ethan had asked me to sign, the conversations he rushed through, the excuses, the pressure. Every time he'd smiled and said, "It's just paperwork, Claire." It hadn't been. He'd been trying to trick me. Natalie closed the folder. We're filing for divorce tomorrow. I slowly nodded. Yes. Daniel immediately looked concerned. No. Natalie frowned. What do you mean, no? If Ethan learns you're filing tomorrow, he'll disappear. What? He already suspects I gave you information. He'll destroy computers, delete emails, move money overseas. And by the time investigators arrive, there will be almost nothing left. I stared at him. So what do we do? Daniel leaned forward. We let Ethan believe he still has control. You smile. You go home. You pretend you know nothing. Natalie immediately objected. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Daniel didn't disagree. I know. But if Claire plays this correctly, Ethan will expose himself. I looked out the cafe window. The city lights blurred through the glass. For 8 years, I had trusted my husband with everything. Now, I was about to become the best actress of my life. I turned back to Daniel. How long? He answered without hesitation. 72 hours. That's all we need. Can you do it? I thought about Ethan introducing me as his sister, about Madison kissing him, about the recording, about him laughing while planning to steal my home. Then I took a slow breath. When I looked up again, the tears were gone. Only determination remained. Tell me exactly what you need me to do. Daniel nodded. For the first time that night, he smiled. Good. Because tomorrow morning, Ethan is coming home. And he has absolutely no idea that his wife is about to destroy the life he spent years building. The next morning, I woke up after barely 2 hours of sleep. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then I remembered. The gala. Madison. The lies. The recording. My marriage was over, but Ethan didn't know that yet. Natalie placed a hand on my shoulder. Are you sure you can do this? I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked exhausted, heartbroken. But beneath the pain, Something had changed. "I'm not doing this for revenge," I said quietly. "I'm doing it because I deserve the truth." Natalie nodded. "And remember, no accusations, no fighting. Let him believe you're still the same Claire." I took a deep breath. "I can do that." At exactly 8:17 a.m., I heard the apartment door unlock. Ethan walked inside carrying a bouquet of white roses, the same flowers he had given me on our wedding day. "I was so worried about you." His voice was gentle, careful, practiced. He looked like the perfect husband. If I hadn't heard the recording, I might have believed him. He stepped closer. "I'm sorry about last night." I forced a small smile. "It's okay." For a brief second, I saw relief flash across his face. He believed me. Good. "I made coffee," I said. He smiled. "Thank you." We sat across from each other at the kitchen island. The silence felt heavier than words. Finally, Ethan sighed. "I owe you an explanation." I looked into his eyes. "You do." He lowered his gaze, as though searching for the right story. "I told people you were my sister because the board believes executives should stay focused on work. They don't like complicated personal lives." "So, you erased your wife?" "It's only temporary." Temporary. Again, that word. He continued. "I was about to tell everyone the truth." "When?" I asked calmly. He hesitated. "Soon." I nodded slowly. "That makes sense." His shoulders relaxed. He thought I believed him. After breakfast, Ethan excused himself. "I have a few confidential calls." He walked into his home office and closed the door, exactly as Daniel predicted. I waited 30 seconds, then quietly walked down the hallway. The office door wasn't fully closed, just enough for voices to slip through. I heard Ethan speaking on the phone. "No." His voice was sharp now. "She suspects something." A pause. "I don't care. We move the money today." Another pause. "The documents?" He laughed. "She'll sign them. She always does." My heart pounded. He still thought I trusted him completely. I quietly stepped away before he could notice me. My phone vibrated. A text from Daniel. "Did he make any calls?" I replied with one word. "Yes." A second later. "Good. Don't confront him. Let him continue." Around noon, Ethan emerged from the office wearing a confident smile. "I've got great news." "Oh?" He placed a folder on the dining table. "I've been working on a new investment opportunity." My pulse quickened. The documents. "So?" "I just need your signature." There it was, exactly as the recording predicted. He slid the papers toward me. "I've already highlighted where you need to sign." I looked down. 23 pages, dense legal language. Most people would have signed without reading. The old Claire probably would have. Instead, I smiled. "Of course." Then I picked up the folder. "I'll read everything first." For the first time that day, Ethan looked nervous. "It's standard paperwork." "I'm sure it is." "So you don't mind waiting?" He forced a laugh. "Take your time." But I noticed something. His right hand was trembling, only slightly, yet enough to tell me things weren't going according to plan. That afternoon, I took the documents to Natalie. She read them in complete silence. Halfway through, she stopped. Her face hardened. "This man is unbelievable." "What?" She turned one page toward me. Hidden deep inside the agreement was a clause transferring authority over assets connected to the Bennett family living trust, including the apartment. "If you had signed this," Natalie whispered, "you would have handed him legal control." I felt sick. So Daniel was right. She nodded. This wasn't an investment agreement. It was a trap. Natalie immediately made copies of every page. "We're keeping the originals exactly as they are." I frowned. "Why?" "Because tomorrow," she smiled, "we're going to let Ethan believe you signed them." I blinked. "What?" She nodded. "We're giving him enough rope to hang himself." That evening I returned home. Ethan was sitting on the balcony overlooking Central Park. 2 glasses of wine rested on the table. He smiled when he saw me. "So, what did you think?" I held up the folder. "I signed everything." His eyes lit up, for just a fraction of a second. Then he stood, walked over, and kissed my forehead. "I'm proud of you." I smiled back. "So am I." Because at that exact moment, Ethan believed he had won. He had no idea the signatures inside the folder weren't mine. And less than 24 hours later, his entire empire would begin to collapse. The next morning, Ethan left the apartment before sunrise. He looked unusually cheerful. He even whistled while adjusting his tie. Before walking out the door, he kissed my cheek. "I'll probably be home late." "Big day," I smiled. "Good luck." He had no idea I was about to follow him. At 8:30 a.m., Natalie picked me up outside the building. Daniel was already waiting inside the car. He looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Are you ready?" I nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." Daniel handed me a visitor's badge. "This will get you into Hayes Capital." I frowned. "Won't Ethan see me?" "He won't expect you." "And today's board meeting is private." "Which means he'll be completely relaxed." Exactly what we needed. The headquarters of Hayes Capital rose above Midtown Manhattan like a monument to wealth. 48 floors of glass and steel. I had seen the building dozens of times, but today I wasn't arriving as Ethan's wife or as his sister. I was arriving with the truth. Daniel led Natalie and me through a private entrance. Instead of taking the main elevators, we entered a restricted hallway. "Where are we going?" I whispered. "The observation room." "Observation room?" He nodded. "Every board meeting is recorded. There are security rooms behind the conference hall. You'll be able to hear everything." Inside, several large monitors displayed the executive boardroom from different angles. Richard Hayes sat at the head of the long walnut table. Madison was seated on his right. Lucas Hayes sat quietly across from her. One by one, the executives entered. Then, Ethan walked in. Confident, relaxed. He greeted everyone with the smile I'd once believed belonged only to me. Richard looked pleased. "Good morning, Ethan." "Morning, Richard." Not Mr. Hayes. Richard. The relationship had clearly become personal. The meeting began with quarterly financial results. Revenue, investments, international expansion. Everything appeared normal. Until Richard smiled. "I have one final announcement." The room grew quiet. Madison looked toward Ethan, almost proudly. Richard stood. "For months, our family has been preparing for an important milestone." He placed a hand on Madison's shoulder. "I believe the future of this company depends on trust." Ethan smiled. His eyes sparkled. He thought this was the moment. Richard continued. So today, I'd like to introduce the man I hope will soon become part of the Hayes family. Madison reached for Ethan's hand beneath the table. He stood, buttoned his jacket, smiling like a man who had already won. Then, the conference room doors opened. Every head turned. Claire Bennett walked in. Beside her, Natalie Reed and Daniel Foster. The room froze. Ethan's smile disappeared instantly. His face drained of colour. Claire? His voice barely escaped his lips. Madison looked confused. Dad? Who is she? Richard frowned. You know her? No one answered. I slowly walked to the centre of the room. Every eye followed me. I looked directly at Ethan, then calmly said, My name is Claire Bennett. I've been married to Ethan Bennett for 8 years. Silence. Absolute silence. Madison slowly let go of Ethan's hand. What? She looked at him. Ethan? What is she talking about? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Richard turned toward Ethan. Answer her. Still nothing. His confidence was gone. The room that had always admired him was now waiting for him to explain himself. Finally, he whispered, It's complicated. Richard slammed his hand on the table. No. It's either true or it's a lie. I reached into my bag, placed my marriage certificate on the table, then our wedding photographs, then tax returns, joint insurance policies, mortgage documents, everything, one by one. Every piece of evidence landed in front of Richard Hayes. Every document told the same story. Ethan Bennett was married the entire time. Madison stepped backward. Tears filled her eyes. You told me you'd never been married. Ethan tried to reach for her. Madison, let me explain. She pulled away. Don't touch me. Richard picked up the marriage certificate. He read it twice, then looked directly at Ethan. You lied to my daughter. You lied to this company. You lied to me. Ethan desperately shook his head. I can fix this. Richard's voice became ice cold. No, you can't. Then Daniel quietly placed another folder on the table. The expense reports. Richard opened it. His expression darkened with every page. Luxury hotels, private flights, designer jewelry, company credit cards. More than $1.8 million in fraudulent expenses. Richard slowly removed his glasses. Is this true? Ethan said nothing. Richard pressed a button beneath the table. 2 corporate security officers entered immediately. Ethan Bennett. You're suspended effective immediately. Your company access has been revoked. You will surrender your phone, your laptop, and your office keys. The room remained silent. No one defended him. Not one person. As security escorted Ethan toward the door, he suddenly turned to look at me. For the first time since our marriage began, his confidence had completely vanished. Claire, his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I looked at him without anger, without tears, without hesitation. You should have introduced me as your wife. Security led him out. The boardroom doors closed behind him. And with that sound, the life Ethan had spent years building collapsed in less than 5 minutes. The boardroom remained silent long after Ethan was escorted out. No one moved. No one spoke. Richard Hayes slowly sat back down, his face filled with disappointment rather than anger. After nearly a minute, he looked at me. "Mrs. Bennett, I owe you an apology." I shook my head gently. "You didn't lie to me." "He did." Richard lowered his eyes. "Still." My company gave him the opportunity to deceive all of us. Madison stood motionless. Tears streamed down her face. She wasn't crying because she had lost Ethan. She was crying because she had discovered that the man she loved had never truly existed. She looked at me. "I'm so sorry." I had no idea. I believed her. Every photograph, every email, every message Daniel had shown us proved the same thing. Madison had been manipulated too. She had been another victim. I walked over and quietly hugged her. Neither of us said a word. Sometimes, women don't need explanations. They simply recognize each other's pain. Richard cleared his throat. "This meeting is adjourned." Then he looked toward the company's legal counsel. "I want a complete forensic audit. Every account, every expense, every contract approved by Ethan Bennett. If there's one lie, I want to find all of them." The attorneys nodded. "It starts today." 3 weeks later, the story dominated national business news. Senior Hayes Capital executive fired amid fraud investigation. Every major financial network covered it. Reporters camped outside the company headquarters. Former employees began coming forward. Anonymous tips flooded investigators. And every new piece of evidence revealed another layer of deception. The investigation uncovered fake consulting contracts, hidden commissions, shell companies, and millions of dollars that had quietly disappeared over several years. The affair had been only the beginning. 1 month later, federal investigators arrived at Ethan's apartment. Except it wasn't his apartment anymore, because legally, it never had been. When they asked for financial records, Ethan couldn't even explain where he actually lived. The luxury apartment he had proudly shown colleagues belonged entirely to Claire Bennett. His own lies had trapped him. 2 months later, the charges became official. Corporate fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement, falsifying financial records, conspiracy. The evidence Daniel had preserved, combined with the internal audit, left almost no room for a defense. Ethan eventually accepted a plea agreement rather than face a lengthy trial. The man who had once dreamed of becoming CEO now stood before a federal judge, not as an executive, but as a defendant. The divorce was finalized quietly. Ethan didn't contest it. He couldn't. Every attempt to claim the apartment failed. The court confirmed that the Bennett family living trust protected Claire's ownership, exactly as her grandfather intended. For the first time in years, Claire felt safe. Not because she had won, but because she had stopped losing herself. 6 months later, I reopened my interior design studio. It wasn't a giant company. It didn't need to be. For the first time in a long time, every project belonged to me. Every success was mine. Every decision reflected the life I wanted, not the one someone else expected me to live. Natalie became my business attorney. She often joked, "I'd rather help you build a company than destroy someone else's." Daniel accepted a position at another investment firm. Before he left New York, we met for coffee one last time. "You saved me," I told him. He smiled. "No." "You saved yourself." "I just handed you the truth." One crisp autumn afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID read, Richard Hayes. "Claire," he said warmly, "I have a proposal." I laughed. I don't think I'm interested in finance anymore. So it's a good thing I'm not calling about finance. He paused. Our headquarters is undergoing a complete renovation. We're looking for a lead interior designer. I smiled. You want my company? I want the best designer. And after everything you've been through, I know exactly who that is. A few weeks later, I walked into Hayes Capital once again. The same lobby, the same elevators, the same boardroom. But this time, no one looked at me with confusion. No one whispered. No one called me someone's sister. The receptionist smiled. Good morning, Ms. Bennett. Mr. Hayes is expecting you. I smiled back. Thank you. As the elevator doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. For a brief moment, I remembered the woman who had stood in that ballroom months earlier. Silent, heartbroken, invisible. She no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had rebuilt her life from the truth. If there's one lesson I learned, it's this. Never let someone convince you that your worth depends on their version of your story. The people who truly deserve a place in your life will never introduce you as someone you're not.